Hey, welcome to high school biology. My name is Rex. Today we're going to study classification of living organisms. The first person to try and classify living organisms was Aristotle. The only problem was he was only classifying them under plants and animals. But as scientists began to discover different organisms, they had to classify those organisms under new kingdoms. The first person to classify living organisms under the groups we use today is Carolus Linnaeus, a Swedish naturalist. We use what is called hierarchy of living organisms to group animals, or to group plants, or even group any other organisms that are not even classified under plants and animals. The hierarchy follows this law. Kingdom, phylum, sorry, not phylum, I was about to say phylum, it's phylum. Class, order, family, genus, and species. An easier way for you to remember this hierarchy is kids prefer chips or fried green spinach. Do whatever works for you. Anyway, these are ways that we're able to classify different organisms, and we're going to focus on mostly this two. Alright? These two terms form what we call binomial nomenclature. When we're talking about living organisms such as cats, dogs, maize, elephants, and other living organisms, we like to call them by the names that we normally call them, but scientists have standard names which are called binomial nomenclature. An example is us humans, we call ourselves human beings, but scientists call humans Homo sapiens. Homo is the genus of human beings, and then the species is sapiens. It's actually a good thing for scientists to classify organisms under, genus and then the species. Yeah, sapiens. Because when organisms are under the same species, they're fertile and they're able to produce offspring, and they're also able to interact with each other. But then there are also different species of humans. Did you know that? There's Homo sapiens, which is more than man. There's Homo erectus, there's Homo habilis, and so much more. There are about 22 different species of humans, but the remaining 21 probably died long ago, and Homo sapiens are the modern man which we see every day. Some other examples of organisms that have binomial nomenclature is papaya. The standard name that scientists call papaya is Carica papaya, and another one is maize. The standard name that scientists call maize is Z maize. But now that we've understood binomial nomenclature, genus, species, and the hierarchy of living organisms, we're going to focus on the kingdom aspect. There are 5 basic kingdoms that organisms are grouped under. There's kingdom Monera, kingdom Protista, kingdom Fungi, kingdom Animalia, and kingdom Plantae. This basically means the kingdom of Monerans, kingdom of Protists, kingdom of Fungi, kingdom of animals, and kingdom of plants. But today we're going to focus on the kingdom of Monerans, or kingdom Monera, and then we're going to talk about viruses. But let's talk about viruses first. Viruses are the only organisms that can't be grouped under any kingdom. This is because they exhibit special properties that make scientists question whether they should be under any kingdom or just be classified as something that is a non-living thing. First of all, the virus is so small that it can only be seen through an electron microscope. The virus has no cell structure, but is only a strand of nucleic acid enclosed in a protein coat. You don't have to understand that, I'll explain it later. But perhaps the most interesting feature about the virus is that the virus can only reproduce or show signs of life in its host or in a cell structure. But the virus can't show signs of life outside of its host. Outside of its host, it just looks like a piece of rock. But when it gets into its host and it's inside a cell, then it begins to exhibit signs of life. So the scientists are beginning to question whether they should be grouped under any kingdom of living things because they actually have life when they're in a living cell, or they should group them as non-living things because when they're out of the cell, they're just like a piece of rock. Today, we're going to focus on kingdom Monera. Kingdom Monera consists of 2 organisms that make up its kingdom, bacteria and blue-green algae. Monerans have a simple cell structure, and their chromosomes lie free all over the cell. Same thing goes for their nucleus. Their nucleus doesn't have a fixed shape, it just lies free all over the cell. Think of the cell of bacteria or algae as of jelly, and just think of the chromosomes as different objects floating in that jelly in different places. So they're scattered, they're not really in one particular place. Now let's focus on each of these two groups. First of all is bacteria. The singular of bacteria is bacterium. Bacteria can range up to sizes of 0.1 to 10 micrometers in length. Bacteria can be found in air, water, soil, and even in living organisms. Bacteria can either be motile or non-motile. Motile means to move, so bacteria can either move or not move. The bacteria that move have a whip-like structure called a flagella, or singular flagellum, to help them move about in water. Bacteria can either come in spherical, also known as coccus, or they can come in rod-like shapes, also known as basilisk. In the previous episode, I was talking about the scientific method and how Alexander Fleming discovered penicillin, and I said he was studying a particular type of bacteria called Staphylococcus. So Staphylococcus is a type of bacteria that is spherical shaped. Also, bacteria feed on ready-made food. They can feed on dead organisms, also known as saprophytes, or they can feed on living organisms. So the bacteria that feed on dead organisms are known as saprophytes. They feed on ready-made food. But those bacteria that feed on living organisms are known as parasites because they feed on organisms that still have functioning organs and tissues, and this can harm the organism. Finally, the reproduction of bacteria involves one bacterium splitting into two daughter cells, and those daughter cells splitting into different daughter cells. So one bacteria can split into two, and those two would split into four, and those four would split into eight, and those eight would split into 16. So in like a matter of minutes, you could have 1,000,000 different individual bacteria. These bacteria split into different daughter cells, and it's known as binary fission, a type of asexual reproduction. And next is blue-green algae. Blue-green algae or cyanobacteria are found in freshwater or in damp places on land. They have chlorophyll, but not in their chloroplasts. Now, when I was talking about photosynthesis in the previous episode, photosynthesis only takes place in green plants. But why are plants green? Plants are green because of the pigment they contain called chlorophyll. Plants contain chlorophyll in a particular part of their cells called chloroplast. Cyanobacteria or blue-green algae contain chlorophyll, but not in chloroplast. They are particles that are scattered all over the cell. Now, cyanobacteria can either exist as single cells or they can exist in clumps or in groups, and same goes for bacteria. It's question time. Give me 2 examples of bacteria and give me 2 examples of cyanobacteria or blue-green algae. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and share with at least 3 people who you know don't have access to basic education or who is bold enough to explore homeschool, and I'll see you in the next class.